You're listening to the WCEG Network on WCEGTalkRadio.com. Click live stream tab, like us on your smart television, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. I am your host, Damita Chatman, for the next hour, where we speak life into the community. We have some new platforms. Your iPhones, iPads, go to Apple Store, search WCEG Talk Radio. Apple Television, search WCEG Network Television. Apple Watch, search WCEG Network. Android phones, tablets, go to Google Play. Lastly but least, this is just everything that is said today with me and Mr. Pike is our views and not the show's. Thank you so much, Mr. Pike. I'm going to let you do an introduction of yourself, and then we're going to dive into some stuff that we want to talk about, and you can kind of shed light on some concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for the opportunity to be on the show and to talk about something that I'm passionate about, economic development, and just a little bit about me. You know, I've been in economic development since the early 2000s, so for a long time at this point. I got kind of started, my path really started from a standpoint of historic preservation. I was on the Historic Preservation Commission down in Albany, Georgia, and just learning how the economics of historic preservation kind of happens in communities. And so that's really how I got plugged in. And then I was an elected official in Albany as well. So sitting down at the table when decisions get made as it relates to economic development issues was something that was eye-opening. Also served on the Economic Development Commission and the Southwest Georgia Regional Commission, which were that's kind of like ARC in Atlanta. And then after I got out of office, decided to have a little change of pace and went over to Villa Rica and started there as a Main Street manager and kind of worked my way up from there. And you know, after we did all the work that we did in Villa Rica, we were recruited to come over to South Fulton and start the economic development department in the city of South Fulton, which was a great and unique opportunity. In February 11th of last year, so my 1 year anniversary, I decided to leave the city and start my own firm, Urban Pulse, and we do economic development and real estate consulting work. And so also a commercial real estate agent as well, so do a lot of commercial transactions. There's a lot of synergy between that and economic development.
Okay. Oh, great, great. Well, thank you. We I know we had a jewel when we had you in the city of South Fulton, but I'm a firm believer that everything is a season.
That's right.
Let's talk about, because people sometimes get it kind of mixed up about what you can put in the area. So by you being a part of the city of South Fulton, right now, we probably got the most developed land. That's it. Is that correct?
Yeah, so in the Metro Atlanta region, definitely you have the most undeveloped land than really any other city. So a lot of potential, a lot of opportunity there.
Okay. So I often hear people say, well, why don't we get a Costco or what is it? A Sam's Club, High Ends, Trader Joe's. Could you speak a little about that? Because with my understanding, when I did my research, they take surveys, and that kind of determines what comes in our area. So is that true or not true?
Well, companies have a lot of different methodologies that they go through to decide where they're going to put a location. I think for the most part, the thing that, especially in South Fulton, is that we look at the city that has over 100,000 people, and we say, oh, well, we should be able to attract whatever we want to attract because of our population. But the problem is those companies use drive time and they use mile radius. And so they need to have a certain amount of people living in a certain amount of miles or certain drive time in order for them to really look and consider an area. And I know a lot of times we say, other cities have, these things and they're smaller than our city. But it's also the density of the folks as well, not just the number of people that you have. And that's really the big indicator. The other thing, obviously, is disposable income, which in the city of South Fulton is not necessarily an issue, but in some other communities, the lack of disposable income to be able to purchase certain products is another thing that they look at as well. So, it's a little bit disheartening because obviously I heard it when I was there as well at the city. We want all of these things, and the reality is you just don't have enough bodies in a certain condensed area, and that's one of the reasons why we've talked about density and creating more density. And people are like, well, we don't want density. Well, you got to have the cars in order for the businesses to be successful.
Okay, great. Let me ask you a question. Another hot topic is the development over on Old National. And do you see them putting high-rise buildings over in that area, like I'm gonna use this, a Bank of America, a Wells Fargo, when they're closing some of those big high-rise down? Do you see them putting big high-rise corporate business like that over in the Old National area?
Well, so this is my approach and my theory on doing development, and so as an economic development professional, it's your job to help the community figure out what it wants to be. And so the folks who live in that area on Old National need to be at the table deciding what it is that they would like to see in their community. I will say that COVID has showed us that while there will always be a need for office space. You're not seeing it come up as fast as you once did because people are working remotely now, and companies have to adjust to having remote workers, and so they don't need as much inventory as it relates to office space. So the demand, I think, is going to be a lot different than what we're accustomed to, even 5 years ago. And then the other thing about office development is that if you're going to do it, it has to be unique. And you see a lot, for example, like Chick-fil-A, they have a beautiful corporate headquarters in College Park, but they moved part of their headquarters to the Beltline because they're trying to attract younger employees, and that's the type of amenities that they want. And so you're going to have to create an environment, not only trying to entice people to do office development, but you're also going to have an environment that folks want to actually be in as well.
Okay. Now, let me ask you, I was out on over off of going down Bolton, and when you go straight down Fort Industrial to Bolton, and you like going to the Chattahoochee area. I've
Mhm.
noticed that they have knocked all those warehouses down, cleared those lands out, and what they got over there now is condominiums, town homes, and work and play, where you can shop, work and play. Do you see something like that coming into? I'm just going to use the city of South Fulton because I live here. Do you see that coming here, and what is the pros and cons to that?
Well, I definitely think you're going to see those type of developments. We were having conversations when I was with the city with developers that wanted to do similar type of concepts. The pros to those types of development obviously is that you have all of the amenities kind of in one place, and you're creating that density that you need to make the commercial parts of those developments work. Um, the con obviously is more people, more traffic, that those type situations. So you just have to decide whether or not you want to have those amenities in your community. A lot of times the conversations that we would have at these community meetings, well, we don't want more traffic, we don't want more traffic, but then you're also saying you want these amenities, and so you can't have one without the other. And the other thing that I think people really miss out on is what we in the industry what we call leakage. That's where sales tax are captured. You leave your community, go buy something in another community. Those dollars are leaking out of your community, and you're investing that money in somebody else's community. So
I think I lost your voice.
the longer you refuse that, have those type of amenities, you're going to have leakage, and people are going to be going to other community, and those communities are benefiting from the sales tax dollars that you're spending there. Especially when you go outside the county. So if you're going to, like Douglas County or Fayette County, Cobb County to shop, the community's not reaping those benefits from tax revenue generation.
So let me ask you, when the community go out, I remember when we first moved out and we bought some big purchases up in Cobb County, they used our address to do taxes. Do they still do that or no?
Well, they do that like on vehicles and purchases like that. The money is going to go back to your home county. But I'm talking, you got to think you have lost taxes. I mean, you get sales tax other than just like for big purchase. Anytime you buy groceries somewhere, anytime you buy anything really that has a tax on it, whatever community that you're in outside of your own, they are benefiting from those sales. And um, so yeah, big purchases or anything that you have an annual tax on is going to be associated to your address, but it's all the other millions and millions of dollars and everything else that you buy that you aren't getting.
Okay. So let me ask you, I did a tour with you, and I can't remember, but we did a bus tour, and I thought it was very impressive. Let me ask you, the land that we have down uh, South Fulton Parkway, I'm just asking you, I our vision, we can put a bank. We don't even have banks around here. We have few. We have to go out, like a banks. They're putting a wine brewery up on Chattahoochee. I think they just opened it up. Could that land out there have that?
Well, absolutely. And, I think there's a collective vision for what South Fulton Parkway could be from a development standpoint. And I know the communities that touch South Fulton Parkway have all been in conversations about really trying to come up with a master plan on what to do with South Fulton Parkway. Definitely, it's a great opportunity to do something transformative. Um, but you got to have the people at the table that have the plan, and everyone's speaking the same language and saying the same things about what they want to see there. But definitely, those things would be great to see happen on South Fulton Parkway. And there have been a couple of things that some conversations that I was a part of when I was with the city of some really cool and unique things. When you look at what's going on at Foxhall and which is basically a big resort that's right over the Chattahoochee River in Douglas County, and what that looks like coming back towards the airport on South Fulton Parkway, and some of the things that you could do, especially with like corporate headquarters relocations, those type things, just because of the proximity to the airport and the connectivity.
And a lot of people didn't know nothing about Foxhole, but it's beautiful out there. Let me ask you a question. Let's talk about South Fulton Parkway. When we were fighting for cityhood, we had a vision for the city of South Fulton on that area, and it was annexed. Do you see, and it's a lot of warehouses there now. We can't do nothing about it, but we can come together. Do you see in the next 5 years those warehouses have been turned into something else, maybe like work and play?
Well, probably not, because warehouses, you need distribution, you need manufacturing, and so they play an important role. The issue that you're going to have with converting those warehouses that they're relatively new inventory, and so they're built with modern specs, taller roofs, connectivity with Wi-Fi and fiber and those type things, and so it would be really, really cost prohibitive for whoever owns those buildings to really want to convert them, because they're perfectly designed new facilities. I think everything there has been built within the last 10 years, so it's new inventory. Now, when you're starting to see, like, if we're looking at like Fulton Industrial, where you have some older inventory that doesn't necessarily meet the demands for companies today, because these buildings are, 50, 60 years old, those would be great repurposed properties. And so I don't think that you're going to see that on South Fulton Parkway anytime soon. However, listen, if someone has enough money and they come in and they want to do something, I'm sure they would sell it, but it just happened organically. I don't, you're probably several years off before something like that would be considered.
So you brought up Fulton Industrial, and thank you for bringing that up. And again, it's a lot of old buildings there. Do you see maybe a city hall or the courts or the police department over in that area? And I say that because I know once it was said it was probably going over in by the Wolf Creek area, but right now we have like a land issue over there, and I haven't heard anything no more about that. What do you think? Would that be a great idea for that?
Yeah, so I think, having, again, the community coming together and having some dialogue around what that looks like, I think is important. But obviously it could be a potential opportunity. Um, there's a lot of reinvestment that needs to happen on the north side of Fulton Industrial, and so this definitely could be something that could spur that reinvestment that you need. But again, you have to take a lot of things in consideration. The city of South Fulton is massive, and so how do you centralize things where all citizens kind of have reasonable proximity to things? I think is something that city leadership looks at when they make those decisions.
Okay. So tell us, what do you think? Let's talk about economic development and your expectations, and let's just dig down in that.
Okay, let's dig down.
Come on, tell us, because I know probably hot on the market, because you're very smart, and I've talked to you. So just tell us, if you were sitting at the table, what would be your vision?
Oh, wow. So if I were king for a day and I could do whatever I wanted to do,
Yeah, what would be your vision?
um, well, the beautiful thing is a lot of the work that we did from the Economic Development Strategic Plan and some of the other plans that you see, either, the LCI for Old National, the LCI for Campbellton Crossroad project that we did. You see a lot of the things that really are kind of the vision of not just me, but other people that are at table. But it's what really would work and really would be transformative for the city and for the community. And so when you think about like the Campbellton Crossroad project, which is a joint LCI between the city of Chattahoochee Hills and the city of South Fulton, really envisioned a walkable mixed use community, kind of like hamlets, not really like a large, dense mixed use development, but more of like a Serenbe feel, if you will. And that's a very realistic plan for that area and for that community, and would be transformative for both Chat Hills and for the city of South Fulton. And then figuring out the town center. I tend to think and believe that it should be somewhere on Camp Creek. That's provides that connectivity that we talked about for the whole community. And there's a lot of available land over there. The problem is when you don't have control of the land, you don't really get a chance to do what you need to do. And so you're trying to work through other people to see if they're willing to come to the table to work on something jointly. And unfortunately, sometimes it takes a lot longer than you would like for those things to happen. But I think ideally that would be, a great location. And, when you start thinking about future plans for Camp Creek and what GDOT has in store, I think eventually what will happen is that Camp Creek will turn into like Langford Parkway, and where you'll have, basically like an interstate type situation. Um, so, that's something that could be help with traffic, help with flow of traffic, but also make that land more accessible and make it, more valuable.
And I know when we was fighting for cityhood, Mr. Pike, it was a water around there. I think it's in District 2. I
Yeah,
think
well,
I think I think City Hall off of Camp Creek, you know what I'm talking about?
mhm.
I
Yeah.
think City Hall would be beautiful there with everything. That's just me. It would be beautiful.
Well, I
Uh,
always joke that you're talking about Van Diver Lake. I always joke
yes,
that I was gonna build when we built City Hall. I was gonna have my office with a balcony overlooking the lake, so it'd be like the only city hall with lake views. So, uh, yeah, but it is a good location.
it's a good look. I like the way you think out the box. We got to think out the box.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and I know you probably heard this before. I don't want no nothing down here. I want it like it. When I build down here, but when I built in 205, we didn't have street lights.
Hmm.
We didn't even have a traffic lights. Didn't even have a grocery store. But I know things change.
Right.
So what do you see the city of South Fulton? I'm just gonna say in 5 years. What do you see for the city of South Fulton in 5 years?
Well, um, that's interesting because I tell people all the time that you can have all the money in the world, you can have all the resources in the world, but if you don't have leadership, you're not going to be very successful. And so I think that really just depends on the leadership that's sitting at the table and their vision and their goal and how aggressive they want to be to do something in the next 5 years. Now we know that people are going to come, and we know that developers want to do stuff in South Fulton, but it's how do you get those things to the next stage? And so having going from conversations to actually action, I think is something that it will affect what happens in the next 5 years. But um, definitely, I think the citizens need to um, be more open-minded about what density looks like to be able to attract the things that they want or the things that they say they want to be in their community. And I tell people I was working on a project a few months ago, and it was a multifamily housing development, and not in South Fulton, another community. And folks obviously was like, well, you're building 200 units. That's going to be traffic's already crazy, and it's going to be congested, and this is just going to create a nightmare scenario. And then I told everybody, I said, think about any place you've ever lived. Think about the neighborhood that you live in now. Think about apartments that you may have lived in when you were younger. And I want you to think, when have you ever gotten in your car to go to work or anywhere else, and everybody in your neighborhood all left at the exact same time? That's never happened. No one's ever lived anywhere and everybody got in their car and then left at the same time. That's the only way that you're going to get that much traffic and congestion, just from one development coming online. And so even like when we think about residential developments that come from time to time, and people are like, oh, well, we don't want 200 homes, so that's going to be traffic nightmare. Well, those 200 homes, those people aren't all leaving at the same time. So I think we um, tend to over emphasize certain things that maybe don't need to be emphasized that much. And so that's kind of my theory and thought process on that.
Okay. Do you think that we need to try to reach the new generation? Because maybe 5 years from now, me and my husband is thinking about downsizing. We don't want to be crawling the steps and living in the big houses. So how is South Fulton going to reach the new generation? Because right now, the young folks don't really have nothing out here. They have to go into Atlanta and the Buckhead. So how can we reach the young people, the generation that's going to be here? Because we got to admit, the folks that's been here 60 and 70 years in South Fulton, it's not promised another 70 years. Not, that go for me too. So how can we reach the young generation that's buying houses?
Sure. Well, like I mentioned about the office, more office inventory. You have to create that sense of place that people want to be. And it's the same thing with residential. When you look at where people are wanting to live, young and old. So a lot of people, as you saying, you want to downsize. Well, they're going to downsize in communities that are walkable, so they can leave their place of residence, walk to a restaurant, walk to a coffee shop, walk to go get their dry cleaning, walk to the drugstore, and they don't want to have to get in a vehicle to do that. And I think, you know, we, you want to be careful when you're planning your city to not become a community of cul-de-sacs, because that is at this point a trend that really is on the downside. Most people, you're seeing these resurgence in downtowns and these resurgence in community centers where people are have that connectivity to walk. If you think about what a lot of the malls are being repurposed, they just rolled out a very ambitious plan for the Gwinnett Place Mall, and then they have some other malls that I've seen in other states where they're doing a big mixed use, heavy residential development, and repurposing mall space to be community space to give you a feel of if you were in a historic downtown. And I think really that's if you want to have young people, that's what they're seeking, that's what they want. And so you have to create those areas if you want those folks to come.
Exactly. Now we're so close to the busiest airport. Do you see gentrification happening? Do you see that happening in our area?
So I have I have a hard line when it comes to gentrification. I think it's you know cities policies, and I'm not speaking South Fulton, just cities in general. And you saw it with the city of Atlanta. They were very late to the table when it came to creating policies to counteract gentrification. You've got to be able to invest in the community, and I'm talking about municipalities. You have to be able to invest in a community without pushing out generational people who've been there, who helped build that community. And I think, and it's not anything that's unique to Atlanta. There's, other cities in Georgia that have experienced that. But I think you got to have policies and you got to be on the front end. Um, if you look at like housing affordability, the city of Atlanta is playing catch up on housing affordability. They're way far behind on this issue and the policies that need to be in place. And so, yeah, people are going to make investments where they can make money. So if people can see the potential to make money on the South Side, then they're going to take advantage of that opportunity. It's incumbent upon the elected officials in these communities to put policies in place to make sure that there's equal access to housing and equal access to economic development opportunities. And so, in the city of South Fulton, I'm thankful and grateful that the elected officials understand that and they get that. And so when we passed the economic development incentive ordinances, we had set asides in that ordinance for locally owned businesses in the city of South Fulton. And so if you came to the city and we gave you an incentive, it would then kick in certain benefits to the community. And one of those benefits, if you were a commercial developer and you're doing commercial retail space, restaurant space, you would have to allocate a certain percentage of your square footage to City of South Fulton owned businesses. And so what we wanted to prevent was from a developer coming in, getting incentives from the city, building these nice developments, and then they're going to bring in businesses from other communities. And then the residents of South Fulton, they don't get to participate in the economic development process. So the economics of bringing in new business. And so that's just an example of a policy that cities can implement that make sure that their residents have a seat at the table when things come on board.
Absolutely. We have a question, then I'm gonna go back and hit something that you just said. With hospitals closing, what determined closings outside of dollars and cents? Is it on the radar for hospitals on the South Side?
Well, it's unfortunate because, with the closing of the Wellstar Hospital in East Point, you're seeing, well, now we don't really have anything on the South Side. And so, you know, there a lot of hospitals have closed in poorer and African American communities in the um, in Georgia, and so some of that has to do with politics, and I'm not going to get I'm not a political scientist. We're not going to get into politics of it, but a lot of it's the state's refusal to accept the increase in healthcare subsidies from the federal government, and you know if we're being very honest and frank, communities of color and poorer communities have a higher rate of folks that aren't on insurance. And so it's a very expensive to run a hospital. And so if the hospital can't recoup money, especially when you have a for-profit entity like a Wellstar, or well, they're technically a nonprofit, I guess, but they're not like run by a hospital authority. So those situations, this exasperates it even more. So it's harder to get a hospital operator to look at some places in on the south side. Not saying that it couldn't. Definitely, we tackled that a lot when we were sitting down at the table, trying to get you know Emory and all of them to kind of take a look. And it's just it's a heavy lift. And then you have the certificate of need that an operator would have to get as well, which that's for all intents and purposes, a political process as well, basically saying, the state issues a certificate of need for communities to build a hospital. And so those are some of the challenges that you have with the hospital. But again, I think those are things that communities need to look at from a policy standpoint, because your health is your wealth. And if we don't have proper access to medical facilities, that's going to have long-term effects on our population. And
Yeah,
um, so it's important.
yeah, and everything centers around politics, and that's why you have to have. It's very crucial for folks to get out and vote, I think, and again have a seat at the table. Now, let me ask you this, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but I'm going to ask it because it's
Oh,
me.
this sounds like a woozy.
Yeah, we
Go
we
ahead.
we always hear, and I'm going to say it, so it is nothing on you. We always hear our mayor says the blackest city, and do you think that's not a good look, or say when you're trying to attract other folks to our city?
Well, so a couple things. First thing, um, based on my research, Tuskegee is actually the blackest city in America. I think they're like 97% African American, but that's a couple of percentage points. The other thing, it really just depends on what the goals and objectives of the community are. And so if that's the mantra that citizens say that we want to use to market and promote our city, then I think that's perfectly fine. If it's the desire to attract certain businesses and to attract certain folks to a community, um, does that could that be off-putting? And so that's kind of the question that folks need to ask residents, because I mean, it's your community, and the elected officials work for the residents. So,
Well, it ain't attracting nothing to me, so that's another story. That's just my opinion. Let me ask you something. Let's talk about the development authority, the housing authority. Explain both of those
right.
so
So
people
you
can
have,
understand.
yeah. Well, the state has authorities for any number of reasons. You can have a hospital authority. We just talked about hospitals. You could actually have a hospital authority whose purpose is to operate, a hospital. You can have joint authorities with neighboring communities. And you can have transportation authorities. So these are just mechanism and tools to do certain things. So your housing authority is a tool or a mechanism to address housing concerns in a community. So, more affordable, low income, those type housing is what you usually see your housing authorities do. Development authorities are just that. So you have two main types of development authorities. You have a citywide or a countywide development authority whose job and purpose is to attract industry to a community. So their main focus is to generate growth so that people can have a good quality of life. And that means livable wage jobs. And so that's really the focus of your development authorities. The other type of development authority that you have is a downtown development authority, and their jobs are focused on the revitalization of historic and commercial corridors within a community. And so they have very similar powers, but the DDA, or the Downtown Development Authority, tends to have some unique powers that allows it to do some things in historic areas. And so you can accomplish, they both serve the same purpose, which is to create economic prosperity for a community. And so that's what they should be focused on. That should be their whole agenda, is to attraction of development and attraction and the creation of jobs.
Okay. So you said something about a downtown authority. And right now, correct me if I'm wrong, South Fulton Downtown Authority, is it in College Park or East Point on Main Street?
You're talking about for the city of South Fulton?
Yes. Do we have one?
Yes, city of South Fulton has a downtown development authority. Yep.
Where's it located?
So the geographical boundaries are Camp Creek, and then it comes down and it encompasses all of Old National, and then it encompasses some parts of where Fulton Industrial turns into Cascade Palmetto.
Gotcha.
So pretty much the center core of the city, and then the both ends of it.
Gotcha. Let me ask you a question. Right now, we see a lot of investors that's coming in trying to snatch up homes and buy people out. Tell me, without getting you in trouble, what do you think and how do you feel about that?
Well, this first came to my attention in South Fulton when some residents from Old National came to me and said people were knocking on their doors trying to buy their house. And, I tell people all the time, I can't tell you whether to sell your house or not. I mean, that's a family decision. That's a, business decision. That's you personally. But I always just tell people, make sure you're educated, make sure you understand what you're getting into. Before I moved to College Park, I lived in English Avenue, and I saw with my own eyes the 7 years that I was there, just the gentrification that took place, and just people were selling their homes for $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, and then they put do a little bit of renovation, put that gray and white tile that everybody's putting in every house now, and they'd put a for sale sign for $300,000 in the front yard. And so just be mindful about that. If someone comes knocking on your door, make sure you get what your value is. And, and if you're not pressed to sell, then I wouldn't sell. So, but we know things are coming. We know that developers are looking at places like Old National. Old National is at prime. When I first came to the city, I told anybody would listen that they needed to buy property on Old National. So
they didn't want to listen.
But in the 3 years that I was with the city, I mean, property values skyrocketed on Old National, and the reason why is when you start putting together plans, like there's a tax allocation district on Old National. There's a LCI that's being done right now. Developers pay attention to that stuff. They know, okay, the foundation is being laid for there to be some good investments in this area. And so, but the beautiful thing is the city can be intentional about how development happens and who gets to participate in that from a residential standpoint, making sure residents are involved in that process.
Leadership. I'm going to say it, leadership. Let me ask you a question, because you said Old National, and I know I've always said Old National. I wasn't here when they said Old National was just booming. Wasn't here, but I do know that Old National is the hot ticket right now.
Mhm.
Have you heard maybe last year, probably October, September, where they had a one shop house over in Old National, where they had investors trying to take your property, uh, everything, the loan officer, everything was in the house over in Old National. Did you ever hear about that?
I haven't heard about that.
Okay, okay, great. Um, could you explain? Because Old National breaks up in College Park,
Correct.
it breaks up in the city of South Fulton, and then once you cross over by Rick Ross, that's Fayetteville.
Correct.
Explain certain things about that issue, because over there, because sometimes people get it confused. If something happened, one side of Gabi belonged to College Park and the other side belonged to South Fulton. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Explain that.
Well, so, when they created the city of South Fulton, everything that was on the south side that was unincorporated, with the exception of a sliver of Fulton Industrial, all became the new incorporated city of South Fulton. And there were parts of Old National that was in the unincorporated part of Fulton County. So obviously it became the city of South Fulton. Um, and I think really the confusion, people really don't care, uh, you know, that they're in the city of College Park or they're in the city of South Fulton. They just want to be able to have the amenities and the quality of life that they want. Or if you're going out with friends at night, you don't really care if you're on the College Park side or the South Fulton side. Um, from a service delivery standpoint, obviously, though, municipalities are bound by their geographical area, which for the city of South Fulton starts at the Bank of America building. So if you're going south on Old National, that Bank of America building there uh, is the first parcel that is in the city of South Fulton. The easier way to think about it, because most people aren't visualizing the Bank of America building, is the Checkers that's right next to it. So on that side of Old National is where City of South Fulton starts. Now, when you go down further, and you may not know, but it used to be an old Pizza Hut building. I think it's been like a Tidal Pond place or some payday loan place after that. It's a vacant building now, but it's on the left. That's where you start the city of South Fulton on that side of Old National, and then it goes, as you said, all the way down to the Fayette County line. Um, and then everything north of that, obviously, the interstate and all of that is College Park. And so, um, I know that both College Park and South Fulton have really a lot of vested interest in the economic vitality of Old National. I know College Park has been trying to be very aggressive with the landowner that owns the old Target land, trying to get him to do something. And so hopefully we'll see something come about here with that. But I know both cities have been committed to making sure that some impactful things happen on Old National. And as you may or may not know, the Economic Development Office is opening week after next, I think, on Old National.
Right.
That was I was involved with the negotiating for that location, and so I thought it was important from an economic development standpoint for us to have a presence on Old National. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let me, this is coming from, I've heard from residents, they're tired of the liquor stores, they're tired of the nail salons, the pawn shops, and etc. So they want some white linen.
mhm,
I know you don't have nothing to do with that, but you know,
yeah,
some sit down. I shouldn't have to go to Douglasville to get a steak.
correct. Yes,
Yeah.
correct. I
Let me
think you're gonna go ahead.
somebody just sent something. I'm reading, somebody just sent a comment. City Atlanta taxes are extremely inflated, which caused a lot of folks to lose their properties. And this opened doors for investors to come in, offer the lowest possible money to homeowners and owners inherit the property. Tell us about that.
So I think that's going back to the conversation we were having about the gentrification. And when I said, when cities go in and they make an investment in an area, well, obviously, property taxes or the value of your property raises when that investment is made. And so people aren't able to pay their tax bill when those things happen. And that's where I was mentioning about policies. See, there's policies that you can enact where you can, for generational residents, you can actually freeze their property taxes for a certain period of time at a rate. And so that's just, a policy that you should look at when you're seeing something like that happen, when people are losing their properties because they're being bought at a tax sale. Because the city's gone in and made an investment, or they've incentivized a developer to come in and make an investment. If you think about some areas in the city of Atlanta, like Old Fourth Ward, well, Ponce City Market totally transformed that area, and it also transformed the types of people who are trying to live in that area now. The same thing, like I said, with English Avenue and Vine City, where I lived for several years. They just spent something like $25 million on that massive park, which is beautiful, but now all the houses around it are for sale. And so, what does that look like from a generational resident standpoint? And so, yeah, that they are referring to folks unable, and it usually happens to senior citizens, and it's an unfair practice, and it definitely, and I think the city of Atlanta, to their credit, has done some things to combat some of that.
Okay, let me ask you. This is another hot topic that I'm hearing. We in the city of South Fulton, we are a city now, but now you got folks that's creating a petition to go back into Atlanta. That probably that won't happen. Do you agree with me?
Well, you can't never say never. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's unlikely that it will happen. But again, politics get involved in a lot of that stuff, and so I will put it this way: the folks that sit down under the gold dome, they create cities and they take cities away. I mean, they have the power to do whatever they like when it comes to those things. But I think it's probably highly unlikely that it would happen.
Okay. Do you think we have enough land out here to put like a Dave and Buster's amusement park? I just don't believe that we should have to go out of our area to spend money to enjoy our families.
Well, we certainly have enough land to build whatever we want to build. So there's definitely plenty of land. Again, it goes back to the demographics and that density question. Everything's you got to have the rooftops. I mean, that's just point blank. I mean, no company is going to look in an area that doesn't have the rooftops to sustain them. And I think what people think, like I had a conversation with a resident one time, and they lived off South Fulton Parkway in one of the communities, and they had like 800 homes in their community. And they told me, well, we have 800 homes in our community, so we should be able to attract, let's just say a Costco's or something like that. And I was like, those 800 homes, everybody in those homes would have to shop like 3 times a day, every day of the week, in order for them to get to the capacity and the revenue generation that they would need. And probably that wouldn't even be enough. So, it's a lot of density that is required. And now there are certain circumstances where you can attract something or a certain business you don't check off all their boxes. But even in a lot of those cases where you see things being built, some of those stuff's incentivized by the local government. So, it's not just as cut as dry to say, oh, well, they have one of those there. Well, there might, if you offer a company free rent, yeah, they might come in that case. But it just depends. I know there was a project in Albany that was done. There was the city wanted a hotel downtown, and pretty much to get the hotel, they guaranteed their note, their bank loan. And they basically, the developer went to the bank and said, if this project doesn't make enough money for me to pay my mortgage, the city's going to cut me a check to pay the mortgage payment. Well, yeah, if I can do that all day, every day, if I knew that my loan was guaranteed by the local government. So things happen. You get things in your community, but you have to be very creative about how you do that.
I think this is it said, when other communities drive to our area to shop, if we had these different buildings put up, stores put up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you had a great mix, if you had some unique stuff, like for example, something that's very realistic that South Phone could do, like an Avalon, right? So Avalon is a really nice mixed use development. I've gone to Avalon to hang out with friends, um, or even something like the Battery. I mean, the Battery is nothing more than a mixed use development with a stadium in the middle of it. But I meet friends at the Battery all the time to eat and have drinks and things like that. I mean, those are realistic developments that would do well in the city of South Fulton, and they're not in the realm of you know impossibilities. I mean, it's possible that we could have those things.
Chris, I remember, and I'm not gonna call the name out. I'm gonna kind of hit you, and you're gonna know what I'm talking about. Back here a couple years ago, an entertainer wanted to. It was told to us wanted to put like a entertainment, family entertainment on South Fulton Parkway. You remember that conversation?
I do kind of, sort of,
Okay.
yes.
What, what,
I,
uh,
I, I had a couple conversations about stuff.
whatever happened to that? Because I say people talk, but you got to walk the walk. Have you never heard anything else about that, did you?
No, but usually what happens in the development process is that you usually have people come to you and they have ideas, and they don't necessarily have the financial wherewithal to be able to carry out that idea. And they look to the city, because they think the city writes out, hands out checks for folks to come and do. And that's not how it works. And so the city obviously can participate in certain ways, but they're not, if somebody has a $25 million development, we don't then just write a $25 million check for them to build their development. And a lot of times that's what we get. People are like, oh, well, I want to do this development, I want the city to give me money, and it doesn't work like that. And so a lot of the times when you hear about these projects, that's exactly what it is. You have someone
Okay.
that has an idea, they come and talk to you, they need $20 million, and well, I tell them, we'll help where we can, where it makes sense, but you got to go and raise the $20 million. Even, I mean, you could do things, especially with the tax allocation districts, where you can infuse some capital. But I mean, it's going to be, if you're doing a $25 million project, you're only going to get, like, I'm just throwing out a number. It may not be just, but like $5 million, let's say. But you still got to come up with the other 20. So
Okay.
I think that's what you see a lot. And I would have 2 or 3 meetings a month with people that had great ideas, but they were looking for capital.
Okay. Let me ask you a question, because I think you were part of the city when they were talking about billing. If you're going down Camelton, going into the Sandtown area, right off of Stonewall Tail, they're knocking all of that off. I think Chattahoochee Street, is homes going there, or condos, apartments?
You're talking about adjacent to the Sandtown Publix?
No. If I'm coming out of Stonewall Tail and I'm gonna
Okay.
make a right on Camelton, right there, they cleared all that land out. You know what's gonna go there?
Uh, I'm trying to remember what's going there. I'm not for sure what is going there. I don't remember right offhand. I know there's a lot of stuff that's being proposed in that Camelton area. I know there's some multifamily housing that's being built over there, but I can't remember right offhand specifically. what's going in that location.
Okay, we got 5 minutes and I'm finna ask this hard question. You don't have to answer it. But if I own some land, because this was a big topic, if I own some land and I can build 100 homes and I'm following the process and so forth, and
Mhm.
I've went and got a loan for those 100 homes,
Mhm.
do you think I should be able to build those 100 homes?
Yeah. So if your land is entitled to build specific products, you should be able to build the product that your land is entitled. And when we say entitled, we're talking about zoned. Whatever your land is zoned for, you have the right and enjoyment to be able to develop that land based on what it's zoned for.
Okay. Well, in closing, what I thought about was the hot topic of Wallace Road and the
Mhm.
30 homes, and they knocked it down to, I think, 30 homes. I think it's now down to 12 homes.
So I'm not familiar with the specifics of that particular zoning. I would just say this. So if you are building something that is you're properly zoned to build, you don't
Mhm.
have to go to a council. You don't have to have any public meetings because you're not seeking a rezoning or variance or a use permit. So if your property is already properly zoned for what it is you want to do, you just submit your paperwork to the planning and zoning department and get your building permits. And then you start building. There's no public component to using your land that's already properly zoned for something. It's when you're trying to change something that you have to go to a public meeting. And then that's how you get, the denials and all of that.
Okay. Well, we down to the wire, Christopher, and I can talk because I got so much more, but that's okay. We'll get you on again. In
Sure.
closing, give me some closing remarks to tell me. And again, I want to thank you for coming today, talking about some of these issues. You hit a lot of important topics. So give me your closing remarks.
Yeah, well, again, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to come in and just talk about something that I'm passionate about, which is economic development. And I appreciate your thoughtfulness. You've always been a great supporter of mine, and I know to be on your good side is always a good thing because we see what happens when people get on your bad side. So I always
Oh
like
yeah.
to say, I've always appreciated your authenticity and your support over the years. And so I'm happy to be a part of today's show and look forward to coming back and talking about more economic development in the future.
Okay. Well, we gonna get you back, and hopefully we can get some stuff and get it done. And but like you say, leadership is important. And I'm gonna
Very
leave it right
important.
there. Thank you so much for coming, Christopher, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Uh-huh.
Bye.